A recent survey shows that a shocking number of students are self-censoring in the classroom. A university removed a suffragette's name from its feminist center in an effort to be more inclusive, and another professor went on an anti-American rant, this time calling Americans the hands holding the bloody knife that has wounded the USA. Plus, in this episode, you'll get to meet my new co-host for the Campus Countdown. We've got a really exciting episode for you this week. I'm Ophelia Jacobson, and this is the Campus Countdown. Starting off with our number 3 story of the week, a new survey is showing that students are self-censoring their viewpoints in the classroom. Here to tell us more about these shocking results is Campus Reform correspondent Addison Pummel, who also happens to be my new co-host for the Campus Countdown. I'm so excited for Addison to upload her very first episode next week, but for this week, let's hear a little bit more about this story. Addison?
Thanks for having me, Ophelia. I'm so excited to be the new co-host of the Campus Countdown. For our third top story of the week, a survey conducted by the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education found that 4 in 5 college students feel that they must censor their views on campus, while 21% of all respondents said that they must censor themselves often. The survey was conducted of 37,000 college students across 159 American universities. 48% said that they do not feel comfortable discussing controversial topics in the classroom, while only 12% of students said that they feel comfortable disagreeing with a professor. However, the most worrying results from this survey are that 33% of all respondents said that it is always acceptable, or sometimes acceptable, to shout down opposing views on campus. The First Amendment is under attack on college campuses, but not for all students. Conservatives and conservative student groups constantly face double standards and discrimination on campus. Just last week at Colorado State University, protesters listed 11 demands for the university that target the free speech of conservatives, including the proposed removal of visiting campus preachers. This issue stems from an unequal hiring of conservative and liberal professors by the university's administration. With a glaring imbalance of opinion and lack of viewpoint diversity, it's no wonder that nearly half of all college students don't feel comfortable discussing controversial topics in the classroom. Ken Tashi, an adjunct professor at Suffolk University, told Campus Reform that many students today misinterpret the First Amendment since they have been told that unpopular or controversial speech is not protected. However, it undeniably is. Higher education should foster viewpoint diversity to produce well-rounded, critically thinking students. The path that our colleges and universities are heading down should be terrifying for every American.
Thanks, Addison, and don't forget to tune into our YouTube channel next week for Addison's very first episode as my new co-host for the Campus Countdown. Moving on to our second top story of the week, the University of Pennsylvania named its Women's Studies Center the Center for Research in Feminist, Queer, and Transgender Studies, removing a prominent suffragette's name in the process. Penn decided to rename the Alice Paul Center, home to the Ivy League University's Gender Studies Department. According to Melissa Sanchez, an English and comparative literature professor who will lead the center, this move is in order to signal, quote, commitment to LGBTQ intellectual and political movements. Quote, the choice to name Alice Paul Center after the U.S. suffragette leader fit with that limited vision of what women's studies was, she explained in an interview with Penn today. Sanchez also cited Alice Paul's, quote, problematic past, including her role in the exclusion of black women from the suffrage movement in order to keep Southern white women on board. Alice Paul was a key figure in the passage of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which guarantees American women the right to vote. Okay, let's take a minute here to pause and think about this. The university is renaming the Women's Studies Center the Center for Research in Feminist, Queer, and Transgender Studies. So what exactly is this center now? Can we even still call it the Women's Studies Center? And if a Women's Studies department is looking to study anything, it should be the way in which women have made a huge impact on society throughout history. By removing the name of a prominent figure in the suffrage movement, they're doing quite the opposite. What this all boils down to is the fact that the left is blatantly disregarding what started the feminist movement in the first place, which is the suffrage movement. It seems as if the left is trying to hijack true feminism and replace it with woke feminism. Now, what I mean by that is true feminism is seeking equality for both men and women, whereas woke feminism seeks to place certain individuals on a pedestal, thus blatantly disregarding the entire equality portion of the feminist movement. And look, the suffrage movement was only the beginning of the work that many 20th century feminists did. According to a Washington Post article, after the 19th Amendment was ratified, life for women improved drastically. More women began running for public office, child mortality decreased, and educational budgets increased. In fact, we have the suffragists to thank for being the catalyst that launched so many women and America as a whole forward. If only suffragists could see the way that modern feminists were behaving today, that in an effort to build up women's studies, we get rid of center names that uplift influential and powerful women in U.S. history. And as a female, I find this especially counterintuitive and concerning that the so-called tolerant left that seeks to empower women is removing the name of one of the most important and empowering women in U.S. history. Ironic, huh? And for our top story of the week, a professor at the University of Wisconsin-Stout included an example of a creative assignment his students were required to complete in his lower-level speech class. It was filled with explicitives, liberal bias, and graphic images denigrating former President Trump and the United States. Paul Kallenberg teaches COMST 100 Fundamentals of Speech, and his syllabus for the class admits that the professor is, quote, big into politics. MSNBC is my station, the professor claims. As an assignment for the speech class, students must create a collage that, quote, expresses their feelings and then record a speech explaining their montage. Accompanying the assignment, Kallenberg included an example collage and speech for students to model theirs after. Campus Reform obtained a copy of that example. The most prominent photo in the collage is of Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump with a vote tally on each of their faces, showing that Clinton had over 2 million more votes than the former president in the 2016 presidential election. The collage also includes pictures of Edvard Munch's painting The Scream, a human brain, 2 dancing H alphabet GIFs, a bloody hand holding a bloody knife, and drawn red scribbles over all the photos. The accompanying speech begins with, "What the F?" with a lot of exclamation points, might I add. That's a bit excessive. Anyways, moving on, the example goes on to ask, quote, where Trump could have won the election in 2016 by getting less than 3 million votes than the loser, violating all ethical requirements of public speaking, and being compromised by a foreign government. Quote, where? The United States of America, Kallenberg's example answers. Explaining the bloody knife picture, the speech claims that our democracy and all citizens are the hands that are holding the bloody knife that has wounded the USA. Quote, we must get rid of the stupid, silly, and senseless electoral college, the speech continues. My mind is a bomb waiting to explode with anger. This is a public speaking class, yet this professor is claiming that he is big into politics and that MSNBC is his station. If he's so into politics, don't you think he should be teaching political science instead? But regardless of the major, regardless of the subject, this professor isn't being paid to unload his political beliefs and frustrations onto his students. And this is yet another example of how people who live in the United States of America seem to be the ones who complain about this country the most. If this professor really didn't like this country, if he thought it was that awful, then why is he still teaching at an American university? Our democracy and our citizens are the hands that are holding this country together, not tearing it down. The real ones that are wounding the USA are those who hate this country and seek to destroy everything in it, both past and present. Unfortunately, this isn't the first time that actors at our higher education institutions have expressed their anger and frustration with the United States of America, and specifically with democracy. For example, a professor at Yale University once said that American democracy was founded on racism. The type of rhetoric this professor is using in his example assignment should not be used as an example anywhere, especially in academia. If this is how we're teaching our students to release their frustration and anger towards the United States of America, we're certainly going to have a lot of issues down the road when these same students step into the workplace and they're confronted with difficult situations that, yes, they're going to be frustrated or angry about. I sure hope these students don't release their frustration and anger the same way that this professor did. Our Woke Tweet of the Week is brought to you by the student government president at Point Park University. Recently, the school has been facing a lot of backlash after Campus Reform reported on an email that was sent to the school's students saying action could be taken if students misgendered one of their peers or refused to use a person's preferred pronouns. Logan Dubel, one of our Campus Reform correspondents, the person who broke that story, recently went on Fox News to talk about it. And since then, a petition has been created by his peers to kick him off campus. The petition has more than 500 signatures. And with all of this attention being drawn to the university, SGA President Dennis McDermott tweeted on September 23rd, quote, Point Park should strive to be the, quote, hellscape conservatives believe it is. Actually, Dennis, Point Park University and all universities across this country should be striving to be places of higher education where all ideas and beliefs are accepted. Schools shouldn't be striving to be hell for a certain group of people. That wouldn't be very inclusive now, would it? And if you are looking for more evidence of how colleges and universities are actively working against conservative groups and individuals, look no further than what just happened at Point Park University and what this student leader admitted online for the entire world to see. Frankly, he couldn't have made it more obvious. Those are all the stories we have for you this week. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And be sure to follow along with all of the college craziness on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter by following us at Campus Reform. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Campus Countdown hosted by our new co-host, Addison Pummel. But for now, I'm Ophelia Jacobson. Thanks for watching.